Hi guys, come on in. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about my spice cabinet. In our last video we talked a little bit about the pantry, and I wanted to make sure that me as a budding YouTuber and a home cook were showing you the periphery. In other words, the outside of the kitchen. Everything for me when we get started on the YouTube channel is not just having ramekins ready, dumping things in there and making it look like you can make an item or an entree or a dinner or a dessert in 30 seconds. I like to talk about the dishes. I like to talk about how we prep for it. I like to talk about how we get ready before I even start cooking. So I'd like you to go on the journey with me. So come on in. Today we're looking at my spice cabinet. And this, just like the last video, is unadulterated. This is before I've had a chance to touch it, before I've had a chance to do with it. Now I have organized this recently, but this goes into the idea of entropy, like we were talking about last time, where things eventually degrade into chaos. If I do a video like this again in 6 months, I'm guessing the spice cabinet won't look like this. But what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit about from the top to the bottom, how I basically organize my spices. And this is just as raw as it gets right now. So, because I'm not super tall, I'm gonna start at the top. And I generally have one of these available handy so I can use them. So at the top, this is where I have things that I occasionally get to. So I have my pickling spice, which ends up being something that I use in stocks and sauces and things. I put it into T-ball and infuse it spice because it gives great seasoning. I have whole cumin. I live in Colorado. And again, cumin is maybe one of my most used whole spices. I toast it and I grind it. You'll see that more later. Nutmeg. So nutmeg is used for a variety of things. I don't just have ground nutmeg. I have whole nutmeg because its flavor is so much better when you grind it itself. Ultimately, you can think of it like a seed that if you grind it, it's not releasing its oils all at once. If you leave them in powdered form, they lose their flavor a lot quicker. So you just make sure that you're doing these a little bit at a time as to how you might be using it. One of the first things I wanted to show you guys today was kosher salt. So I believe that salt needs to be able to be pinched in order for you to measure it very well. As a home cook, this is something that I utilize almost every single day. In the chef world, seasoning something is simply the application of salt. For home cooks, we say seasoning something, and we're talking about all of this. But for our purposes, the most common thing, salt has one magic property, and it makes everything taste a little bit more like itself. And as human beings, we need salt to have electrical activity in our body. So I think that our body craves that salt. We use it to regulate our water. We use it to season foods. And honestly, it's one of the cheapest, if you wanted to call it spices or seasonings. It's just delicious. So my wife painted this for me. I generally have a salt box. And what I do with the salt box is I fill it up, and I almost always use a coarse kosher salt, say that 3 times fast. And I've seen like the diamond crystal salt come on stage. I don't know when diamond crystal salt took over or people are using pink Himalayan salt or whatever. I generally just use Morton's kosher salt. So you open it up, you pour it in. Oops, we'll clean that up later. And then I have salt to use for almost all of my cooking needs. Also, I've been into fermentation lately. And fermentation takes, if you're doing a salt brine, takes a lot of salt. So I'm going to put this back up here. There's another fun ingredient. These are dried onions. If you're just looking for a little crunch or you're looking for a little extra flavor, it's like a solid little umami bomb to put these dried onions on there. Got these in the Indian food store, and they use them in biryani. Of course, it's not an authentic biryani. It's in something that you would make really quick. If you want to know what biryani is, we're going to talk about that later when I talk about Indian cooking. This is, I do a lot of Indian cooking, so I made my own garam masala. And so I'll have it done here. We also have, my wife recently got a label maker. We can post the link in the description for that. These label makers are amazing because, she'll get really creative and even do things like pumpkin spice. It's so cute. She can put my face on there if she wants. So also up here, I have, these are dried curry leaves. You can freeze them or dry them, also used in Indian cooking. You're gonna notice the top two, heck, even spilling into the third shelf are a lot of Indian spices. It's not necessarily my go-to method of preparing food, but if you are going to cook Indian, it generally, and you're gonna cook Indian well, it generally takes a lot of spices. We'll get into that later when I talk about like my tiered lists of how we're gonna cook vaguely ethnic foods. I can't claim that any of these are some version of authentic. They're usually my version of something that I want to make. So also up here, I just sometimes use this seasoning for little achiotes just to pump up the extra Mexican or South American or Latin feel to ingredients. On the second shelf are mainly my ground Indian spices. So you can see I have a Kashmiri Indian chili powder. Chili powders and paprikas, by the way, extras of those you can actually keep in the freezer. Ultimately, they're a dried pepper, so they actually do keep very well in the freezer. And in the next video, when I show you my refrigerator and freezer organization, you're gonna see how I keep those. And believe me, I'm gonna show you that raw as well too, because I don't want this all polished up just because I'm posting it on YouTube. This is as important for me going on my journey as a YouTube and a home cook as it is associating to you, because we all don't have perfect pantries and perfect refrigerators like you see in all the shows. I just think it's BS. I want to see people as it is. I want to motivate that way. So as you can see here, sometimes I even have seasonings behind. Now, this violates one of my primary rules. One of my primary rules is that things have to be in visibility. So you'll notice sometimes that I have, even on top, so I have tiered shelves for the spices, and I want to be able to see everything. Once you put things behind and you can't see them, they're gonna get lost. That's gonna be something that we're gonna talk about when we talk about pantry organization as well. This is why you dig through at Christmas time and you find things that expired 2 years ago because they were out of your main vision, they get out of your routine, and they don't get used. So the number one rule is that prime items get prime real estate. One of my, I would say maybe number two rule is don't put things out of view unless you know they're there. So for instance, things I know that are there. I make a lot of Indian food. This is amchur slice. This is in essence like a, it's the pith of a young mango, and you actually grind that up and it gives a very sour taste at the end. We'll talk about that more later. Sometimes I have extra of my spices. So I hope that doesn't break. Hope that didn't break. Okay. This is fenugreek. So fenugreek has almost like a, I want to say like a minty oregano-y flavor. Quite delicious, but I have it already in a jar. If I have this in its jar, I try to let it go down first. That way you're not just continually putting new spices over old spices. Otherwise, you're going to end up with flavorless spices. Put that back here. Put that here. Just a minute. Okay. And you can tell on the next shelf. So look, I even have coriander. This used to be Spike, one of the seasonings, like the seasonings I grew up with, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But this is whole coriander. And then I also have it ground. So probably what I'm gonna do is take this and put it behind here. Right? Easy. This says curry powder, but it's a homemade curry powder, even though I had somebody, either Leslie bought one or it came with a meal set or something, but then I make my own. And then I have it spare. On the next shelf, I have whole seeds that I use sometimes and whole and ground seasonings that I use often. So even this is a, says Safeway Signature Select. At some point I bought that, but now you guys saw in the previous video that I keep these in bulk and I just refill them. Am I particular to whether it's glass or plastic? I prefer glass, but it is what it is. This is one I wanted to point out, and it's been getting a lot of attention lately, which is Kali Namak, or black salt, Indian black salt. So odd that you would have a spice that is salty and minerally, but its main function is that it's vaguely eggy. So for those of you out there who would say, I don't want something sulfury in my food. If you've been eating eggs or scrambled eggs or egg salad, you actually enjoy that flavor profile. And this is a way to apply that flavor profile. I can't wait to show you guys how to use this. Again, one of my most used is cumin. This is ground, and you can see I ground a lot of it because I use this in chili powder. I use this on its own. It's in Mediterranean food. It's in Indian food. It's in Mexican food. It is a workhorse. Okay, so moving on, Mexican oregano, sometimes hard to find. I have sweet paprika and smoky paprika. Both of them can really enhance the flavor of like deeply rich dishes. And the smoky one can give you almost like a ham-like aspect to your cooking. The next shelf, I can put this away now. I have to shout out Derek Sarno because I have used a lot of his spice rubs in back, which are heavy flavored in nutritional yeast. Well, if you don't know what nutritional yeast is, you can think of like a dried or cooked brewer's yeast that adds a very like cheesy flavor to things, but is also high in vitamins like B12. So these spices, barbecue rub, scramble mix, garlic and herb, Southwest mix, and pizza spice are all variations on Derek Sarno's recipes. I should probably put his link below there because I have to say a lot of my influences in cooking have come from YouTube. I can't pretend that every single idea I have is my own. There are so many people that have influenced me on the way, and I just want to make sure that I'm giving credit where credit is due. But one of the other most important things I say in cooking is to take something and make it your own. So almost all these recipes, even though they were influenced by other people, I learned the method of how he does his nutritional yeast seasonings, and then I make my own. One of the most important ones I do, again, I told you guys I live in Colorado, is chili powder. So making your own chili powder is really fun. I have my nephew come over and do it. I should do it for a video sometimes. If you guys want to see that, post it in the comments and I'll show you my hyper nephew. If you think I'm hyper, he's hyper times 2. One of my favorites, I call this my super base. So what super base has in it is garlic powder, onion powder, I have a vegetarian chicken base, and cumin. And that is the base for so many different things I cook, from dried beans in the pressure cooker to Mexican, Indian, everyday food, Mediterranean especially. I can apply this and it's like the base flavor. Are there any recipes out there that when you use garlic powder, you don't really use onion powder? Or even if you did, why wouldn't you just use both? I oftentimes combine garlic and onion powder. That's what this is. It's just garlic and onion powder in equal parts. If recipes are continually telling you to put equal amounts of garlic powder and onion powder, why not just have them both ready to go? Okay, so now we're on to the last shelf. And on the last shelf are things, I want to make sure that things are in a good view so you can almost see everything so that I'm not missing or losing any spices. This is a particularly fun one. This is a dill pickle seasoning. So I was at a party this summer and people gave me, jars and jars of kind of those low quality pickles that you would see at some sort of event. And I just couldn't eat them all before they were either going to go bad or just sit in my refrigerator where I really don't have space for them. So I dehydrated them. And then I added garlic powder, onion powder, nutritional yeast, maybe some salt, maybe some MSG. And it created like a popcorn seasoning, but also this really enhances the flavor of something like a potato salad. So I think we should do a spice blend day. What do you think? Okay, so now one of the last things I want to talk about are seasonings. I used to own a spice store in Colorado. And even when I owned a spice store, even though I can talk about all these incredible ingredients, there were still spices that I bought from the store that I've had because I've had them my whole life and they were part of who I am and part of like getting my cooking journey. If you guys don't know what Cavender's is a vaguely Greek seasoning, so it's heavy in oregano and maybe some other spices. I think it actually says on the back that it has and 5 other spices, which is hilarious, but also has a little bit of MSG. So if you're, looking for oregano is used in Italian foods, Indian food, Mexican food. Do you see the trend here? And this has a little bit of, it just like jacks up that flavor. I am the king of putting things into smaller containers, but this is Lowry's seasoned salt. I don't even know what it used to be black salt, but this is Lowry's seasoned salt. And if you guys know how to get black salt, by the way, in bulk, post it in the comments so that I can know where to buy it. Because so far I can only find it in this container. Again, Colorado. So tahini, this is like a chili lime salt. Just put this on sliced bell peppers. It is amazing. Amazing. Low cal, delicious, savory, knocks out a chip craving. Unbelievable. This is one influenced by my sister-in-law and my wife's grandma Katie. This is Jane's Crazy Mixed Up Salt. I always have this in house, and this smells a little bit like, it smells a little like summer. Like the celery seed, garlic, things that you're going to put into your egg salads, your pasta salads, and things like that. I find it really great on dishes that resemble chicken. Things like that. I even bought one not too long ago that was another one of the variations, but since then I've just made this my own spice blend, or I just keep adding to it. Don't be afraid to add to it. Don't be afraid to make it your own somehow. Here's a fun one. I call this steak rub. I eat mainly plant-based, vegan, but that doesn't mean that you have to necessarily. And this is just heavy in all the flavors that I have barbecue and maybe a little bit of sugar so it caramelizes in that cooking process. So before I put all this stuff away, ooh, this is a fun one. See, it's just who I am. You got to follow me, people. I'm all over the place. I toast pepper just in a pan until it smells really, really good. I just shake it around the pan. And then I either crush it in a pestle and mortar. I don't know. Or I grind it in a spice grinder, and then I just do little pinches of toasted pepper. When you toast spices, especially whole spices, it releases their oils and makes them taste really good. Down here, okay, let me put this stuff away. See, entropy already. So down here, I have a lot of the base oils that I use. You may be looking at this from, I made these 3 chili flakes. These are from Thai chilies and just regular red pepper flakes. And one other thing, I just experiment with them all the time. I have Mexican vanilla around. If you want to make it feel like you have a sweet coffee, but you don't want to add sugar and you're trying to cut down, put a couple drops of Mexican vanilla in there. It'll make you feel like you've sweetened your coffee. Very similar. I do the same thing with like an extract like hazelnut. Hazelnut and cocoa powder will make you feel like you're having Nutella. Just a few other oils that we'll talk about. Always, a nice pepper grinder. My wife and I fight, and she doesn't really like the coarse one. She likes the more fine ones, and I think they have different uses, but I tend to like a lot of pepper. It's the king of spices for a reason. So I just wanted to know from you guys, first of all, that I appreciate you coming on the journey with me, because this is raw and uncut. And I wanted to know if there were common spices that you have in your house, like a Lowry's or a Cavender's or a Jane's Crazy Mixed Up Salt that you want to have at your house that I should have in mine. I want you to tell me if there's things you want to see me use these seasonings for. Do you want to see me do a rub? Do you want to see me do marinades? Do you want to see me make the spice blends myself? We can do all of that, because I think this should be a process between you and me. I'm going to improve myself as a budding YouTuber and a home cook, and hopefully I can help you. But it doesn't just start with the ramekins. That's the fun part. That's the very end part. That's the sexy part that most of YouTube is doing. But I wanted to show you from the pantry to the spices. Next is going to be the refrigerator and the freezer. And I hope you will be on the journey with me. So thanks so much, and we'll see you guys again. Bye-bye.